everyone, and welcome back to the episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural. We're so happy that you are joining us once again, and that you're here with us every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we talk about the issues of the day with our two legal experts who are here to be a part of sharing uh, the legal content, and then, of course, apply it to what we see culturally in each of our communities. So thank you for being here. We're going to let our two legal experts greet you, and then we're going to get into a packed show today and go through a lot of information. So make sure you tag someone, let them know that we're live. And if you're catching the replay, just put hashtag replay so that we understand and know that you're tuning in and we can be attentive to the questions that you may have. So, buenas tardes, dias, Senor Pichardo.
Hello, everyone. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Welcome to the show today. Pretty packed show. A lot of hot stuff going on in the news. I'm pretty much sure that you're going to find it interesting, fulfilling, as well as educational. Stay tuned.
Absolutely. Gracias. And now let's move on to Mr. Russell. Would you like to greet the family? And hey, Rich Russell, thank you for always being here to join us for the show.
Hey everyone, glad to be here. I'm just filling up my gallons of water that I'm going to go through because we're going to be talking about a lot of things, and I don't want to get dry. All right, so cheers, here we go. Let's get it going.
You sure that's water in there, brother?
Oh Lord, here we go, and the show begins.
This is the show where the cultural and the legal meet. So, which side of the street you standing on right about now?
I just want to make sure. That's all.
Oh my goodness. Anyway,
all right. Well, if my camera starts to freeze, then you know that it was something other than water. All right. So let's hope that everything works out.
What you trying to say?
Anyway, we're going to go back to Speaking Legally, and we always acknowledge when we are aware that ancestor has transitioned, and this is someone who used to make us laugh. So I think it's appropriate that we're starting with a little laugh today in his memory. He is an actor and comedian, AJ Johnson, young, 55 years young.
55 years old. Yeah, 55.
So,
yeah, and, he's well known for being in
Friday.
Yeah. I was going to pull up.
It seems like we have a little delay.
Yeah, so that's the little tweet from one of the episodes that everyone remembered him about and could make us all laugh. But definitely rest in peace.
Yeah, that brother really made me laugh. Anytime I saw him in any one of those movies, on any of the TV shows he was in, he was funny to watch. Definitely used to touch the funny bone for sure. So may he rest in peace, and I'm sure he's gonna have some folks laughing up there in heaven. So God bless you, brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's one of those supporting actors and comedians that you probably would never go see do a stand-up, but in the roles that he played, his comedy became very, very vibrant, right? And so you need those type of folks when you're trying to put a presentation and put a movie together. Everybody's funny in their own right. He definitely was. It's sad to see that, at the age of 55, because some of us is near that age and some of us may have surpassed that age. So, we'll take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
Yes.
I mean,
that's what legally speaking is all about. We do speak for ourselves. Clearly, some of the water that splashed on you,
yes,
felt a little bit like fall. All right, so I can dig it.
As we continue,
you stole a cookie and you wiping your lips. It's like let's slow down.
Oh, well, Easy, you made us laugh again. And yes, rest in power.
I heard his father was a black stuntman. or he was the head of the Black Stuntmans Association or something. So he has some family history in Hollywood.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah, I believe I read that about him. Interesting.
Definitely. Well, we are so talented as a people, and so many things that we can do. And the fact that he was a supporting role, we know how important it is to have support. Right? Not everybody's going to be the star, but they're just as important. We know MJ and Scottie Pippen. So anyway, thank you, Robert, for tuning in. Appreciate you being here. And now we're going to move into the not so fun content of our show, and that's the news of the day. So we're going to start with something that we've been talking about here, knowing your rights as an employee. What does that look like? COVID has opened up a whole different parameter of how we do business, how people come to work, not come to work, choose to fight it. And now there's a mandate that is out because of the vaccine. And here in New York City, everybody watches what happens here because it influences and impacts other states throughout this country. So, legal experts, vaccine mandates for New York City teachers, state healthcare workers head to court. What is this about?
Well, what's basically going on here is the following. Mayor de Blasio ordered that teachers return to the classroom, that city workers return to their workplaces, and that they be vaccinated. And that triggered three different sets of legal proceedings that observers are watching right now. About a week ago, the United Federation of Teachers received a ruling from an independent arbitrator, I believe Marty Scheinman, regarding workers who receive a medical exemption, religious exemption, those who are immunocompromised, pregnant, I believe, in the third trimester, etc. And to summarize it, the arbitrator ruled that the city must offer work outside of school buildings to those who are immunocompromised, that those who decline the vaccine can go on unpaid leave or take severance, and that they would continue to receive a year of health care coverage. Now, that's the United Federation of Teachers. Just to explain to the audience, as probably many of you are aware, UFT Union, the United Federation of Teachers, it's a union. They have a contract with New York City that governs the relationship between the employer, the city, and their members, the teachers. And so that proceeding with that arbitrator was pursuant to that. Okay. Outside of that, though, ultimately that vaccination mandate was set to take effect on September 27th. So the United Federation of Teachers, as well as DC 37, which represents most of the city's workers, they filed a lawsuit seeking an injunction, a court order stopping the city from implementing that mandate. And a judge, I believe Judge Love, granted both of those unions a temporary restraining order, a temporary injunction, a temporary stop from that going into full effect. However, that court hearing was scheduled. That they received that TRO on September 16th, and the judge scheduled a hearing for today, September 22nd, to allow both of those unions to fully argue against that mandate, because the mandate was that you had to have at least one shot by September 27th. So, we're going to wait and see either this evening or shortly thereafter what the judge rules in terms of what happens to employees who are otherwise, in the UFT case, not covered within that arbitration ruling, and all of the others. But also, speaking to the title of the article that you have in front of here, the state healthcare workers, they ended up going to court, and there was a court hearing for a TRO apparently yesterday in front of a federal judge. And that judge basically did what the city judge did in the UFT DC 37 case. That federal judge granted the state healthcare workers a temporary injunction. So the state is not going to get to implement their mandate as scheduled. And I would imagine there's going to be a hearing in the next couple of weeks. Because just to give you kind of a legal lens to the audience, what happens in many cases is if you want to stop somebody from doing something, you file for a temporary injunction. That temporary injunction, as it states, it's temporary, and the judge will say, listen, you made enough of a case that I should grant a temporary injunction. One of the prongs of that is irreparable harm. If you can show that there's going to be some irreparable harm and whatever it is that's happening has to be halted, the judge will say, okay, fine, I'm going to stop it for now, give the parties a chance to write legal briefs and make their arguments, and then I'll make an ultimate ruling on as to whether or not to permanently stop or grant you that permanent stop, meaning to the person who's petitioning for that thing to be stopped, to be halted, to not be allowed to take place. And so, today, UFT DC 37, they're making their arguments for the permanent. The Fed judge granted a temporary. The state healthcare workers will wait and see what's going to happen there. So bottom line is it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that we're talking about state, right? Mm-hmm. We're not talking about private entities. So don't, as they say where I'm from, what's up, Rob Ross, from St. Mary's, I hear you on the line right here. Don't get it twisted, right? So don't think that these same type of arguments are going to prevail when you're dealing with a private entity. It may not prevail. And what I also want to let everybody know, because once again, I think people get it twisted. Working is a privilege. It's not a right. It's not in the Constitution. It's nowhere. It's not in the 10 Commandments. It's nowhere written down anywhere where it says that you have a right to work. And as we go through this uncharted territory and we look at whether it's the UFT or whether it's the healthcare, state healthcare employees, you have to understand working is a privilege. It is not a right. So there may be times that you have to fall in line. And this might be one of those times for a couple of reasons. One, teachers who are so dedicated to their craft of teaching, they know that doing online teaching, home site teaching, not in school teaching is very detrimental to a lot of students. And they themselves would tell you that they felt ineffective. So yes, on one hand, nobody wants to be told what to do. And I think that's what the fight is really. Don't tell me what to do. But because if you took a poll of those same teachers and those same healthcare workers, they would probably tell you that they're vaccinated without any mandate because a lot of the world is. So, I'm not saying that people are shadowboxing, but I just want to put it in perspective that before you pick up the phone and make a phone call to myself or Brother Pichardo, do the analysis. Say, do I work for the state? Do I work for a private entity? If I work for a private entity, understand whether state or private entity, work is a privilege. Where the state comes in is that you have unions, so it's a little harder to terminate you. You have anti-discriminatory guidelines that the company or your employer might be funded by the state or funded by the feds. But if I own mom and pop shop, Russell's Bodega down the way, or CVR, whatever you want to call it, War Russells or War Pichardo, it doesn't go down that way. If I own a franchise of McDonald's, it's not happening that way. And I don't want anybody to get it twisted to believe that, I'm empowered to take this stand. You are empowered to take this stand, but you're not empowered to get the results that we hear here. 1 full year of healthcare benefits, knock it off. Is not going to happen in the private sector. You
Well,
drew your line. You drew your line in the sand, and we crossed over it. Now, what you gonna do?
I'm gonna play the clip before we move on. Let's see if we can.
It's Natalie Duddridge reports from Lower Manhattan.
City officials and union reps filed into 80 Center Street this morning to hash out a decision on vaccine mandates. More than a month ago, Mayor de Blasio said all teachers must get the shot by September 27th or lose their jobs. The state said the same for healthcare workers.
When we had the COVID outbreak, it was very, very scary. Even for us, the healthcare workers, it was scary. So I think people should be vaccinated.
But many disagreed. 17 healthcare workers filed lawsuits and several municipal unions sued the city, saying the mandate violates constitutional rights. In separate court rulings, judges temporarily halted the mandatory vaccines until today. This morning at his daily briefing, the mayor seemed confident he'll get his way.
Everyone understands what happens if you're not vaccinated in time, what the penalties are. I don't expect a lot of people want to experience those penalties.
The United Federation of Teachers says while it believes members should get the vaccine, they don't believe it should be a condition of employment.
I think there are probably alternatives for that they can get tested consistently.
There should be a happy medium. I know that there's been often testing, weekly testing. I think is a way that you can probably get around this to ensure everyone's safety.
The city says the latest numbers show 87% of teachers are already vaccinated, but there have been some staffing concerns if employees refuse to get the shot, not having enough teachers or substitute teachers or healthcare staff in hospitals. Last week, Governor Kathy Hochul said hospital officials are prepared.
It's the smart thing to do. We have to continue the mandates. I will make sure that we have the resources, and people are required to have temporary staffing plans.
We're told a decision could come today, latest tomorrow. We'll have all the details coming up for you at 5 o'clock.
So, as we said, and you suspected, Mr. Russell, that most teachers, 87%, would be more than the majority, are vaccinated. But this is ongoing, as we heard what the mayor said, what the governor said, and the feedback from those who they interviewed on the ground.
I find it very interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let's understand one thing here is that I'm gonna look at every single comment that was made, not every, but by the citizens. One said that there has to be a happy medium, right? I understand that, but understand how happy mediums work. If you have to do something every week, right? The happy medium may make you disgruntled. What do I mean by that? Not just testing once a week. We want you to get testing every other day. Now, let me just tell you something about the COVID test is not a fun test. We all know that. It is not a fun test, kind of, with the swab up the nose. And I know they got some other ways that they're doing it. In my daughter's school, they do it by way of saliva. You spit into a cup and they look at that. But none of those things are, something are welcoming. So if the alternative is that we ratchet that up, then that's also putting your back up against the wall. I do believe in that if it's against your religious belief, you have substantiated that. If it can complicate some type of other health issue, or you are immune or have some type of reaction to immunization, I understand those. And I think that should be well documented and carved out. And hopefully that will. But I don't know. It's probably very, very, very few. The numbers are probably even smaller in the healthcare industry where they're exposed to COVID that they're not getting the shot.
Listen, one of my big issues here is these statements about condition of employment, constitutional rights. It's like the right to do what? The right to remain unvaccinated, but at the same time be allowed to interact with those who are or maybe immunocompromised. It's kind of blowing my mind, some of the rationales that are being used here. Sometimes I think about kind of like these negative rights. I think about you want to control a woman's body and not allow her to decide what to do with her body, but at the same time, you want to be free from a mandate to be vaccinated. You don't want to make vaccination a condition of employment, even though scientifically a condition of employment is to not act in a manner that's detrimental to your coworkers. I mean, I think at the very end of the day, what's going to end up happening in the courts is that they're going to allow they're going to prescribe some sort of regime for the giving of exemptions under medical and under religious. And, in terms of religious, that it has to be, sincere, that it can't just be, just some fly by night thing, but, something established and real in terms of what you have to show, and allow for that, or not, I mean, but at the end of the day, I think the idea of not allowing someone to say, no, I don't want to have to be vaccinated, but still I want to be able to walk in there and work and get paid, and the hell with my coworkers. I don't think that argument is going to fly, not with the use of some sort of constitutional argument. I mean, you can look at the freedom of speech. The freedom of speech itself is not absolute and subject to certain boundaries. You can't scream fire in a crowded theater. I mean, none of the rights that are conferred to the citizenry by the United States Constitution are absolute. All have some parameters, especially when you're starting to deal with, safety, possible dangers, and the like. You can't just do whatever you want. And people have to understand that the whole idea, I'm free, I should be free. Yeah, you free to go and live out in some island somewhere where it's just you and I guess those people who aren't vaccinated, and you guys can hang out with each other and not expose anybody else. But this continuous idea, I get to move around others and not be vaccinated. It's just it blows my mind, really.
Everything has its own consequences. Excuse me, Dr. Grant. Everything has its own consequences, right? So you can choose not to be vaccinated. You just don't have to work here. I mean, like, that's that. You can choose. Those are choices, right? I mean, we have children. We tell our child, you can do whatever you want. You just can't do it here. So now you need to get your funds up, get your resources, and go find yourself an apartment, right? We have conditions on employment that already exist. See, the picky uni, I'm going to choose this and not choose that. Some conditions are you have to be drug-free. Job mandates, you have to be drug-free, right? I mean, like, that's the reality. You have to be drug-free.
That's my point. The minute that your freedom impinges on my freedom and safety, that's where it stops.
Of course.
But this is a hot button topic that continues to be debated in homes, in boardrooms, and in courtrooms, clearly. But we can do what Rich said, and we can all go work for Russell Burgers.
Not even there. I ain't buying no burger from you unvaccinated. I mean,
that's right.
Hey, good afternoon, Maria.
And you do.
Good afternoon.
Have a seat, and we'll treat you right. Right.
All right, Kevin.
Hey, look, and one thing, most of the people, right? Look, if it's the younger generation, God bless them. But a lot of people, if you ask them to lift up their right shoulder, you see that little dot that's on that shoulder. That shows that you had immunization way back in the day. You were shot up with something. It's there. If you look at your shoulder, you see that little circle. You see everybody mostly have it. Yeah, where did that come from? That didn't come from because you was on plantation number 54. That came from because you wanted to go to PS 54. That's where that came from. In order to go to PS 54, you had to get a shot.
I'm too young for that. But yeah, as we move on.
Let me see that shoulder since you got your shoulders out.
That's in there.
Yeah, there. Right, so, see how the mic blocks the other one? Right.
I show both. But great to see you, Kevin. Thank you for tuning in. John as well. Maria again. Rich, thank you. Robert for being involved in the conversation. So as we continue to move on, this is not the end of the vaccination, getting it, not getting it, mandate, not mandate. It's just beginning. And because this is all so new with this particular pandemic and all of the issues that are being raised, we really have to just do and make decisions that make sense for you, your family, and your community. We have to think on the things of others, right? Because we don't want to end up in a situation where we jeopardize each other's lives. So, with that being said, we do have another issue where lives are in jeopardy. And we talked about this particular headline where Rikers continues to present itself in the news with multiple challenges. This is not new. What is new today, and we want our legal experts to comment on, is the fact that New York City is suing the Correction Officers Union and calling wave of AWOL staff an illegal job action. So AWOL, but an illegal job action. Wow. I've never seen the city do this in recent times, and maybe it's just me.
In the past, I used to be an attorney for the Transport Workers Union Local 100, and the MTA would kind of threaten the union if there was ever any time where there were like these slowdowns where train operators were like arriving to stations late and the schedule wasn't being adhered to, or if employees were booking off sick and they felt that there was some coordination taking place. But I don't believe it ever got to that because the MTA would never be able to get to the point of being able to prove a certain level of coordination that would rise to the level of, the term illegal job action. Why do I say all that? What I'm trying to say is that, if for some of you that don't know, there's a law called the Taylor Law, which makes it illegal for unions like the correction officers to actually go on strike. And so what happens is that if the employer, in this case, the city of New York, can prove that there's a job action taking place in contravention or against the Taylor Law, then they can go to court and either force those workers to come to work or fine them or terminate them. There's just a myriad of consequences that take place, take away the union's ability to be able to automatically deduct dues from members' salaries. There's a range of penalties there here. And just by the way, last week, what I thought was going to happen actually is that the union was going to, take the city to, oath arbitration, to the labor bargaining board over this whole issue of, suspending, disciplining, certain employees who weren't showing up, this whole switch from having NYPD, regular police officers, take over the job of transporting prisoners so that these correction officers that transport can go into the jail. And Royce made an excellent point that those are usually jobs that are gained through seniority, you being able to leave the jail and just do the transportation. And, those types of changes are usually viewed as substantial changes in the terms and conditions of employment, which are usually topics that trigger a mandatory discussion, mandatory bargaining, mandatory negotiating. So I thought the union was going to be the one that was going to make the move based on what the city was doing. But the city said, you know what, we're going to go ahead and sue the union. So this is going to be very interesting whether they're going to be able to prove, and quite frankly, the amount of the number that is being given for the amount of correction officers that are booking off or otherwise AWOL is pretty large. The question is whether they're going to be able to connect that to the union and be able to say that this is a coordinated action that's against the law. So
I think they're going to have a hard time.
Some interesting times, I must say.
I think they're going to have a hard time doing that for two reasons. One, we know, when I say we, I mean everybody that's watching this show knows that correction officers have to do double and triple shifts. We know that we live in a day and age where mental health is at the highest alert and wellness is at the highest alert. And so when you have those two at the same tipping point, folks can call out because they're just not mentally prepared. They're exhausted. They've been working double, because they're understaffed as it is. They've been working double and triple shifts. They've been coming in on their day offs. This has been happening historically pre-COVID. So to show a pattern in practice, it would be astronomical and insurmountable in reference to having the coordination put together. I'm not going to repeat anything that Ed said because he's right on point. But what I will tell people, because sometimes I think in our last segment or segment before, we hear this word reasonable accommodations. Well, let me tell you, when the pinch is out, most accommodations are not going to feel like they're so reasonable. You know what I mean? Because you're used to doing a certain thing. You're used to working a certain hour. You're used to having a certain shift. You're used to all these seniority benefits. And because of the mandate and because of vaccination and your position and your opinion, which you have a right to, your life is turned upside down. And as I explained to one potential client, I'm not arguing with you. I'm not mad at you. I'm just giving you the information. Working is a privilege, not a right. And you have the right to say, I don't want to work here anymore. People do it all the time. People get tired of doing the same thing and they leave, irrespective of any mandates or anything of that nature. And people leave because, as they say, the man got his thumb got his foot on my back. You know what I'm saying? People leave because the pay is not right. People leave because they say it's a hostile workplace. But
well, I just want to call out something. You mentioned something earlier. You said, listen, hard to terminate in terms of these city and state employees.
Yes.
The city is looking to discipline these employees who are quote unquote AWOL, right? The question is how quickly can that take place, right? Because when there's a collective bargaining agreement in place, there is a disciplinary process.
Process,
and the union can slow that down. They can grind them things to a halt. I've seen it as a union side labor lawyer, and frankly, right now you have an emergency situation in Rikers. You have inmates dying. You got people in danger. I was listening to a radio show earlier. They had on a young man who apparently is incarcerated there, saying that the residential unit that he's in is being run by, I guess, whatever gang is the majority there in that unit. They're the ones who are running the show in terms of who gets food, who gets. I don't know how he got to use the phone because usually they run that too.
Because he probably down with the crew that's been running the situation. See that's
unless he got an illegal cell phone. I don't know. I'm not going to speak to that. But I found that interesting. Like, how you making a call? You said that, but not to make light of what's going on. I pray for those who are currently in there. I pray for the families who have a loved one in there that they're worried about every night. Folks got to sit down. Level heads got to sit down and hash this out. What I've seen happen in the past is officials will bring in that sage veteran mediator who brings everybody into that hotel room, locks the door and says, we're not leaving here until we come out of here with a deal. And there's going to have to be a deal here. I can't see anybody suing their way out of this I think the courts are of limited remedy here in terms of forcing this and forcing that. The NYPD isn't happy that, they're going to have to all of a sudden now transport inmates, these correction officers who were engaging in those duties prior to, what's going to happen with them. this is I think this can legitimately be called a real disaster.
And we do want to acknowledge. One second, Mr. Russell. We do want to acknowledge what you said, Kevin, about detainees and not inmates, because they're being held. I think that's the most heart wrenching part for families who might have innocent people sitting in there experiencing the disaster as you described it.
Well, one of the young men apparently that died the other day was someone there who was within that classification of one who was in there for what is being labeled under less is more now as a technical parole violation. I believe he had missed some appointments, marijuana, a hold was placed, and he was in there, caught COVID, and died. It's just in terms of the update, the last show we were talking about Hochul signing less is more. She apparently went ahead and signed it and ordered the release of 191 prisoners who fit the category. Apparently, this gentleman wasn't able to be amongst those. And then I also heard that, or I read, not heard, read, reports are as well that she has made an agreement with the Department of Corrections to move inmates who have sentences of 90 days or more to state prison facilities, which are much more stable and safer. So, this is a real ongoing drama here.
I think what is happening here, and I know what is happening, what you're really doing is just pushing people and numbers. So now the state facility becomes overburdened, because you're just pushing people numbers. People are not getting out fast enough to stop that from happening. And so that is part of the reality that is out there. But if I am someone that is running for mayor, I got to know that this is coming straight to me. Like, it ain't sunlight coming, it's a train coming. You understand what I'm saying? And if I am Eric Adams, who has a law enforcement background, you need to be on day one prepared to quail, to solve, to mediate, capitulate, hold steady and fast to, be stubborn. You need to do all those things to make this right, because no one way is going to be the right way. It's going to be a combination of things. But to think that it is a now problem as opposed to a then problem or a future problem would be short-sighted in every sense of the word.
I have two favorite phrases that are gonna, I believe, eventually gonna apply to this situation. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Okay? Once you become the person in charge, all those heavy responsibilities and decisions now fall to you. And also another phrase, success has many fathers, failure is an orphan. People like to attach themselves to success, but nobody wants to attach themselves to failure. We're going to see what's going to happen here for sure.
Yeah, this story still unfolds. I was in another meeting earlier where this was being discussed. I mean, we're talking about humanity, like just the simple humanity that is being abused in this situation. It hurts our hearts as members of the communities where the legal meets the cultural. We know what the makeup of Rikers Island looks like when we look at the numbers of Black and Brown families that are represented there. So it'll be interesting to see who is big enough to put their ego and political views aside and think on the lives, both of the correction officers and of the detainees, right? So, it's both sides, a lot to be considered. Yeah, we'll give him a chance to get the camera back on. But with that being
I hope
said,
he's okay. I'm sorry,
yeah,
I don't mean to laugh. That looks like, oh my God. Okay, all right.
that was like one of those unfortunate bloopers. But hopefully he
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
and all is well. But this whole situation at Rikers, it just really hurts my heart because just like the gentleman that you just mentioned that passed away, can you imagine like what his family is feeling and going through? And oh, so many other stories that don't get told. So as we check in on the back channel to make sure that Mr. Russell is okay, we will continue the show. I think the camera must have tipped off, so we'll give him a chance to come back on shortly to continue because we do have another story that's been the top of the news with our brothers and sisters coming over from the unrest that is happening in the beautiful island of Haiti. So we've seen the images of U.S. border agents chasing migrants on horseback. The photographer was explaining what he saw, and you know, you look at the images and you're like, what is really going on? And for everyone who is concerned, Mr. Russell is fine. He is here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tragedy.
channeling,
Yeah.
are you channeling AJ? Is that what's still happening? We're still channeling the ancestors. That's what.
No, I'm channeling this brother being grabbed by the horseman. That's exactly what I'm channeling. It's disturbing, and my device falling off the table was very disturbing because we know how much information we have in our computers and we have our intel, and I would hate for anything to happen. And then plus, I would hate to miss the audience that we have before us.
Yeah,
So,
well, most importantly, we're glad that you're okay. It didn't look favorable, but as we continue on here, yeah, looking at this photo and the other photos that were circulating, I know there is a particular rally happening in Miami. There's some others that are happening all across the country. I mean, what kind of scenes are this? It's 2021. What are we really seeing? What is going on? I hear some backpedaling from some officials in some areas. This is just a lot. And DHS is promising a swift investigation, but really?
I mean, listen, this is emblematic of a serious failure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let me speak to the legal part of it because I think the political part we can kind of talk about all day, right? And it's important, right? It's important to talk about the political part, but the legal part is that there is an avenue for some type of road to staying in the United States for our Haitian brothers and sisters. So I don't want anybody to think that there isn't an avenue. Whether the avenue has been overburdened, we can have that discussion. But for the education and the legal part, there is this form of relief, having been a former attorney for Department of Justice. And the reason why I'm sitting here today in this particular room is because the backdrop is, if you look at my backdrop, there's one picture of a gentleman with the flag over him and in handcuffs. And that kind of symbolized slavery. It symbolized immigrants. It symbolized, those who were brought here and now are handcuffed to whatever society has to bring. And to the left of that, or right behind me to my left, I guess, is another small little picture, which is one of the first dollar bills that had slaves on them, right? So I think it was appropriate that I be here when we talk about immigrants and our fellow brothers and sisters, because there is an avenue for success or avenue to stay. And I want people to understand that it does exist before we start to talk about what we're seeing. It's called temporary protective status. And that applies to people that come from El Salvador, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, and the Sudan, and from Haiti. And what is that? What is it? What is temporary protective status? Well, basically what it is that if your country suffers from one of these catastrophic, earth-shattering events, volcanoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, that the United States provides a way for you to come to the United States, provides you a way to come to the United States, and while here, to apply for temporary protective status. Now, to my knowledge, there isn't a cap to that officially. But as you know, we can't, as Americans, adopt everybody from every single country. So for those that are Haitian that live in the United States and who are here illegally, if they are caught or detained by INS, they can file for that. You allow the 18-month period starting as far out as May 22nd, 2021, which gives you somewhere to December of 2023 or 23 or something like that. So there's a period that you can file for that. There's been some legal battle since Trump was our president in reference to whether the Department of Homeland Security can take away your temporary protective status and force you to go back to your country. But that has not come to light. A matter of fact, the appellate courts have said, no, we're going to hold that in abeyance. If you have TPS, if you're applying for TPS, that's what they call it, temporary protective status, then you can have that as a protection and you don't have to go back to your country. So what do you need for that? There's only two requirements. The requirement is that you're actually from the country that has a disaster. You don't even have to be born there. If you're a nationalist from there and that's your national origin, great. If you're stateless and you reside there, great, right? Or if you had a continuous presence there over a period of time. The time is not defined, but over a period of time. Or if you're in the United States for a period of time illegally, and you can show that you are from Haiti or you're Haitian, then you can apply for the temporary protective status. The reason why I'm harping on this is that I don't want people walking around thinking that they got to duck and hide and they got to watch whatever door and every corner they turn, because there is an avenue. And with that avenue, which Ed can start to talk about and we can engage in, is that when you apply for TPS, you now can work, because we know it's all about work. Because I know a lot of immigrants that come to America and they're like, you know what? I really like the freedoms I had at home, but the money's good here, right? And so I'm going to work to do some things that I can't do if I was at home. And so you get an employment authorization document. And we know that there's a work shortage, a labor shortage here in the United States. So if you apply for TPS, which is Form 821, and for work authorization, which is Form I-765, now you're able to work in the United States. Pay your taxes, because we know that's what America is all about. You paying them taxes, and help reduce the labor shortage. And so that's what people need to know, and that's what we should kind of really let everybody know, that there's a way out, despite what you see here.
And we appreciate that from the immigration standpoint. You know, that is what both of you work on. But there's a political side of it, Senor Pichardo.
Yeah, I mean, this is this looks like a really bad look for the Biden administration. And let's be clear, this is a situation that they inherited. This was something that had been brewing for quite some time. You know, and now you have, from reports,
and as you said, he wears the crown.
Yeah, heavy as the head that wears the crown. This was something that was clearly brewing. You know, sometimes people will say, well, what are all these Haitian people doing over here on the U.S. border with Mexico? I thought that Haiti was in the Caribbean. What are they doing here? Well, apparently, according to reports, a lot of these are folks who left Haiti and have been traveling through many of these Latin American countries with the hope and expectation of ultimately being able to enter the U.S. But, you know, that signals kind of this overall failure when it comes to immigration policy and when it comes to foreign policy by the United States. And once again, now you have a situation where the government is caught in this bind where they either figure out a way of dealing with immigrants at the border, those who want to come in, or sending them back to their countries, and sending them back to what and what dangers and what hazards, and what role has the U.S. played in the instability of those countries that have led to these hazards. You know, that's the problem I got here with anyone who says, well, you know, we can't let everybody in. Well, we also got to stop interfering in people's business overseas and causing instability and problems where we have refugees and folks leaving their countries to come here. You know, at the end of the day, like Royce mentioned earlier, there's, you know, according to reports, there's a labor shortage in this country, you know, and I'm fairly certain that these are people who want to work, and we have to provide them with a vehicle to be able to do that. One of the problems that I got with what's going on right now is I've heard reports that the Biden administration is planning on sending these Haitians by plane back to Haiti. And so I'm saying to myself, is that really a palatable solution? Is that what we're doing here, in conjunction with Mr. Cowboy grabbing the brother like this and treating him disrespectfully, a fellow human being? I mean, you know, this is not going to work. And maybe the Biden administration is satisfying some of his constituents on the border who think this is okay, but there are a number of other constituents who don't believe this is okay. And the Biden administration is getting heavily criticized for this, on top of, you know, what just occurred a few weeks to a month ago, you know, with the with the ending of the Afghanistan war and what happened there. This is now, you know, a second blow, you know, and once again, these are situations that weren't created by the administration, but were inherited. But still, now that you got the crown on your head, you are now in the position you're going to have to own, you know, these dilemmas and deal with them adequately and properly. And, you know, they're going to have to find an answer to this. And this is not the answer right here. This is clearly not.
And the answer is not a one-word answer. The answer is essay, right? Because when you look at the Democratic Party, you have so many fractions that make up the Democratic Party, right? Progressives, not so progressive, liberals. I mean, you have so many individual hubs, or let's just say hubs, that make up democracy, which makes up diversity, which makes up the Democratic Party. And you're going to have the dissension, and everybody's not going to be happy. However, humanity is uniform, and that's what we're not seeing. Humanity should be uniform, and it's about who is actually, once again, it's just like policing, right? You can have all the great rules in the world, and you can have all the Department of Homeland Security rules in the world. It is who's implementing them and how they're being implemented, which makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, this is a story that it continues to unfold, and you see the images and it breaks your heart. And that's why advocacy is needed. There are many ways to get to the end, and there's a lot going on in the world all at the same time. And our hearts and prayers go out to those who are living this in real time, right? Who are the members of this picture, right? They didn't volunteer to take the photo. Someone captured the photo of them going through a very difficult time publicly. So, you know, sending them back on a plane, I'm confused. I don't know. And I know the pressure is building for the administration and their response. the prayer is that they make the right response so that lives aren't lost unnecessarily. And once again, going back to what we said earlier, the humanity of it all. I mean, what are we turning into in the world if we just can't think of how to treat people with common decency? Or at least what I thought existed as common decency.
No, you got this brother. He clearly has food in his hand, and he's being grabbed by his shirt by a white guy on a horse. It's just not good. It's not good, man. It's not.
I mean, look,
What is that?
it's definitely not good. We can all agree with that. But you know, part of our mission here is plan, protect, and empower. And so I don't want any of our brothers and sisters that are of Haitian descent thinking that now they got to cower and now they have to hide. You don't have to cower. You don't have to hide. You may have to present yourself to apply for the right things, because we know that we have people within our community that just don't want to do the right thing, which is protect themselves. You know, many people become legal permanent residents and they stay that forever. And then when they get into trouble or the trouble comes their way, then they have their legal permanent residency removed. And you say, well, why didn't you become a citizen? You know, I didn't get around to it. Something that doesn't hold weight. So this is in the air. It's here. Apply for TPS. The time is now. Don't wait. Apply. Get the protective status. Have it extended. Be able to work and come from behind the shadows.
Absolutely.
And we're here to help. We're here to help to make that happen.
And that's why our legal experts continue to share this content and information. You can have extended conversation or share their websites with those who need it. So if you go to the law office of edwardpichardo.com or roycerussellesquire.com, as you see it scrolling across the bottom of our screen, you can contact them for additional information. So as we close the show today, as we talk about helping and being there with the humanity of it all, I am organizing with the Queensborough president a night of healing. It's a virtual event this Friday from 6 to 9. And, you know, we have people over 2 weeks later that are still living in some very challenging situations. Appliances that are still being moved out. Really, some of these homes should be deemed inhabitable, but we are partnering with Showing Hearts Foundation so that we can get real-time resources in their hands. Here's the bottom line, family. They don't have stoves that they can cook on or a refrigerator that they can open and get a snack. They have children in these homes. How can they focus on school when they can barely sleep? I mean, it's a lot. So we can't save the world, but we can help these families with urgent need while they're waiting for FEMA and all of the other applications that are being distributed. We've invited all of our other elected officials in the Queens area to participate. We've invited organizations to be a part of it. We've invited performers. Right now, Charles Jenkins is confirmed to do a drop in virtual sort of performance. So we have just a lot going on in real time. I don't believe in standing by idly, waiting for somebody else to do what you have capacity to do. So it's a tight timeline. We're turning this around really quickly. The website is Night of Healing. You can go straight to Night of Healing and make a contribution. You can tune in. Upbeat night with messages, music, cultural expressions that can just lift people's spirits. Folks are really downtrodden. COVID was enough to drive everybody crazy. And then you had global warming and all of the different storms and hurricanes and wildfires and all these things that are happening. So we invite you to do something that you can. Maybe it might not be financial. Maybe it might be a relationship, a connection, something to help people survive these interesting times that we're living in. So we invite you to anightofhealing.com. And I'll let my legal experts close out with final words as we are at the top of the hour.
Can you go back to your flyer for a second and scroll that for my final segue?
Sure.
I think it's important that people see what I'm seeing in this.
Sure. One moment.
All right. So everybody, you know, it's always a pleasure having you here and always a pleasure speaking with you. And we'll see you next time. But scroll and see who's attending, the people that you invited.
Well, they're invited. Not everyone is confirmed, but they're invited.
I understand. And keep on scrolling. And I want people to understand, look at the diversity and look at the people of color that's there. Because we always talk about empowerment, voting, putting people in proper places. And these are people in proper places. And hopefully they'll come. Hopefully they'll lend their hand, they'll lend their voice. But there are a lot of faces here that look like you and I. And so it may not be you today. It could be your son tomorrow or your daughter next week. So let's take hold of every step that we have to put our people in places that we can empower, plan, and, benefit our future. See you next Wednesday.
All right, everyone. Well, I will just simply say farewell. Stay tuned. Keep your eyes on the events that are taking place around us. And, I wish you the best.
Bye-bye, everyone. See you next week.